Hey, what's up? I'm Joel Madden, and this is Artist Friendly. On this episode, I'm talking to Doug Robb from the multi-platinum band Hoobastank. They're celebrating the 20th anniversary of their sophomore album, The Reason. Let's go.
Bad times, I don't wanna have bad.
I take Zens all the time.
What is that?
Nicotine.
Okay.
Totally addicted to nicotine.
You want to hear something very not rock and roll with me?
Yeah.
I've never smoked a cigarette in my life.
Ever?
Ever. Not even had a lit one in my mouth.
You know how I got addicted to nicotine?
That's pretty lame, isn't it? Right?
No, that's actually...
I know in my old years, I wear it kind of like a badge, you know?
That's actually like really cool.
But that's like not, is that like not having any tattoos? Do you have any tattoos?
Do you have any
That's
tattoos?
a joke. Not one.
No tattoos, never
Zero.
smoked a cigarette.
Zero.
I think that's cool.
No, I mean...
It's kind of the cool now.
It's punk now.
Yeah.
And that's why Dan and I kind of were like, dude, we can't get tattoos now. We can't. It's too late. It's too late. Oh, it's been too late for a while. We've had this conversation for a while, saying like no tattoos is the tattoos of when we were growing up.
Yeah, it
because
is.
my best buddies were like, they got tattoos early on, 15 years old, 14 years old. And I'm like, oh my God, these guys are crazy. My parents would be like, you can't hang out with that kid. He's got a tattoo now, you know? It meant like, look out, these guys are bad news.
Back then. Now it's like
I'm bad news, dude. No tattoos.
No tattoos.
Look out.
Watch out.
Tough guy.
Never smoked a cigarette, no tattoos.
No.
I got into nicotine chewing tobacco.
Really?
When I grew up in Maryland in like the sticks.
Yeah.
And we chewed tobacco.
It was around, everything was around me. Everything, constantly. I grew up where I live now, dude. My kids go to the same schools I went to.
That's fucking cool.
It's weird, right? It's very weird.
That's dope.
For here. Because I feel like there's so many people in and around LA that aren't from LA.
Yeah, we're all transplants.
Yeah, but except for me and a couple of guys in my band, that's it. We're like.
Well, my wife is
right.
Nicole's from LA, which is weird because I never, like where I came from, you leave. Well, not everyone leaves, but like that's a part of the dream of a kid. You grow up in this small town and you're like, I want to get the fuck out of here.
Right.
Every song that you've ever wrote was kind of about that. Then you come to LA. But I always wonder, like in LA, like where do you go from LA?
There's like
nowhere to go.
47 of us who still exist, who are from here. Every town, I feel like in high school, you bitch about like, I need to get the fuck out of here. And it's,
fuck this place.
Yeah, everybody's like, this place sucks. No matter where it is. It could be the coolest place ever. You think it sucks when you're in high school.
Teen angst.
Yeah, and but I never had that. So I was like, I kind of dig where I live, and my childhood seemed pretty good. I have good memories, and then so there was I always wanted to have, like, if I ever had kids, like if I could give them the same type of thing that I had, I thought that would be awesome. Plus, I remember it must have been like my sophomore year of high school or something like that. The teacher who was I forget what class it was, like history or something like that. He was retiring. It was like his last day, and he didn't give a shit. Dude, the kids were going nuts in the class, like last period of his last day, and everything was loud and chaotic. And he got everybody to shut up for a second, and he said in the most like matter-of-fact way, like, hey, I don't know, who needs to hear this or something like that. And I'm not trying to be mean. I'm not trying to whatever. I'm just trying to tell you guys some facts here. He's like 97% of you guys won't make enough money to live what your parents do right now. And that stuck with me. Think about how funny that is. Like a teacher just says one thing at the end of his career and it hit hard. I was like, oh shit, I really like it here. Like I like my life out here, and I would love for my kids to have something like this. I remember thinking that at like 16. So when I was lucky enough to go, I can still live here, I made it like a priority to have my kids go to the same fucking elementary school I went to. And I feel like that's like a more of an East Coast thing.
That's awesome.
Like when there's multi-generational like houses where families stay in houses.
Yeah, there's people with last names that you grow up with that's families have been in the area for generations.
Right.
Like, and on the East Coast, in Maryland, it was like there's a lot of history. So it's like Revolutionary War, Civil War,
Right.
a lot of like historic places.
Right.
And you have families that have been there since then. That the areas are named after their relatives, right? And the streets and stuff are named after their relatives, which is super cool. But if you're not one of those families, I think you can feel weirdly. I know it sounds weird, but like if you grow up in a small place and there's like these families that have been there for a long time, it's actually a thing. Like you feel like you're just not as valuable.
I can understand that.
And you kind of just want to like go out into the world and
Right.
find your value.
Yeah.
You know?
It's true.
But I think California's kind of got this vision of like when you think of California, you think like a new beginning for yourself. You think of like opportunity. You think of like when I came to LA 20 years ago, I didn't know anyone, but I just thought it was like a magical place because everyone just seemed happy. No one really cared who your family was. Not that, now if you go to I feel like as an adult, you go to the East Coast.
Who are you hanging around with?
When I was a kid?
No, when you came to California and you said everybody was happy. And
Our artists and stuff.
right.
It felt like
I
everyone
was like,
was
that
stoked.
might have had more to do with it.
Yeah, I think
Everybody was happy because they're doing what they want to do,
That's it. I think there's plenty of people here who aren't happy. Just like the world is the world, right?
Yeah.
And everyone's. I think the mission in life is to like find happiness. But when I came here, it just seemed like everyone was doing what they want to do. They were happy. They were inspired. And I was like, I never want to leave this place. This feels like endless opportunity to be yourself.
That's exciting. Just hearing you said that made me feel excited.
Well, when you've never been here,
Yeah.
and you have all you've ever seen is TV and movies, and then you come here, it feels magical. And I think that a lot of people from the East Coast have that experience, especially the weather too. What you end up missing about the East Coast is the seasons, but where you begin, you end, right? So like you begin with like the weather's always good, and the weather on the East Coast is cold and rainy and seasonal. And then you stay here long enough and you miss that because you're like, I missed the season. So, but you could always go and
it's still there.
Yeah. It's crazy that teacher would say that. I don't know if he's right or wrong.
I don't know either. I have told that to my kids now. I was telling you I have a 13-year-old and a soon-to-be 10-year-old. I've told them that exact story because they always ask like, I can't believe we go to the same school. I would be dropping my kids off at elementary school. I'm all, I used to ride my bike here, and this is the fence. I used to lock my thing, so eventually,
Sounds like a nice childhood.
It gets to that. It was all right. I mean, it was fine. It was, unless there was something majorly traumatic. I feel like most people, look back on their childhood and go, it was kind of fun being a kid. You don't know any different. Like it's not about, oh, I wish I had this and I wish I had that. Your life was your life, and
you don't need much when you're a kid if you have a stable place.
Right. And it's interesting what you think was stable back then, you realize later, you're like, God, that was fucked up. Like that was kind of weird. But like I said, you didn't know any better. And kids are good at adapting and surviving,
They are, not to get too therapeutic, but I think.
Let's go, dude. We got the chairs.
Yeah. This is like therapy sometimes. It is for me, by the way. I love it. I think people who suffer in their childhood, because we all do in some way, shape, or form, we go through stuff that changes us. But I think we like internalize it and create a story that is happy for the most part, so that we can live with the bad things that happened. Now, I think there's like a spectrum of like, there's a bad childhood and then there's a pretty good childhood and then there's a great childhood. I think we're all reaching for great with our kids. Like we want them to have a good childhood. We want them to like have a stable life and be able to grow up and not have to worry too much about the world until they get old enough. You're reaching the ages with your kids. I'm there with my kids because they're teenagers, where like now the reality of the world is gonna, there's no way around it.
Right.
And then you just help them kind of navigate that as much as you can. And some stuff they're just going to learn, and some stuff you can kind of help. But I don't think it's better to have a hard childhood. Some people will say like, "Oh, but it makes you who you are," and I'm like, there's a lot of
everything
ways.
makes you who you are.
Yeah, there's a lot of ways to become who you are without like, if you can avoid
Everything
trauma.
makes you who you are. Yeah. What is that saying? Like hard times make. You know what I'm talking about. You must. I'm going to butcher the saying.
I'm sure
it's like somewhere along the lines of paraphrasing, like hard times make.
Good rhymes.
Yeah, or no, yeah, or good times, or something like strong, strong people, and then strong people make good times, and then good times make weak people, and weak people make. It's like a cycle,
I don't believe that.
I understand the sentiment. I totally get it.
I get it.
I get it. I don't think, oh, dude, that's the formula. That's exactly what it is. I think there's a truth in there for sure, but that's not the only truth that's out there.
I think that people try to make sense of suffering, so they create these sayings to help people live with their suffering. But I do think that there is an optimal place to live. I think there's like we can optimize our lives and try to do things the best we can. I also don't think that so I'll start with when we met. And when we were back in the day, when we were out there working and stuff, we were around. I was in one of your music videos. I think that we are a generation of I think we're like kind of like the first generation of like our parents come from a different generation, and there was a simplicity to that. They were like, I put food on the table and a roof over your head, and there was kind of like that old
right. And not to derail your thought, that grew up, being a parent now. When I look back at my parents, the fact that like my mom specifically did that, like she kind of was the breadwinner and everything, to me, like checked the box as like great parent.
Good job.
Yeah, like she. We was clothes on our back, never went hungry, all this kind of stuff. But as I've gotten older, through my own therapy and stuff like that, I start to go, because you start to ask, why am I the way I am? Like your whole life.
What shaped me?
Yeah, I am, which is something I never put too much thought into. Like I am the way I am because that's who I am. I never really understood too much like, oh, I do this because of XYZ. And so many of the patterns that I am now are because I viewed like parenting like that. Like
simple.
Yes. Keep your kids alive, keep them fed, keep them out of trouble.
And there's something to that.
Yeah.
The basic level of parenting is that.
Right.
There is something to that. So I give my parents a lot of credit because.
So if we're a generation with parents that were in that type of mold, it's going to create a generation of people who have the same issues we have.
Yeah, well, I think it's like our basic needs were met for better or worse, right? So there is something to that. And so like I always say, like we are like standing on our parents' shoulders. For better or worse, if we go to therapy and we analyze everything, we could find all the problems. And there's a whole suitcase of stuff to unpack and go like, okay, how did that really affect me? But at the end of the day, like the basic needs are met. There is something that you have to give credit to, like with a lot of love. Like in that generation, that was actually like, that was parenting. Our generation, and maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm just hanging around a bunch of artists. So there are, I'm sure there are dads our age, right? That are like, I put food on the table, I have a roof over their head, they go to school, they have everything they need. I'm a good parent. I'm not saying they're a bad parent.
Right.
But the messaging behind things and how are you framing the world for your kids so they go out into the world and they create a life they want to live in? That's what I think about.
Right.
Do we want to live in our lives, or do we look at, there's a lot to it, but like it's, to me, it's pretty simple. Like, are we living in lives we want to live in, or are we miserable? And at some point, what's the point of life if you're miserable? Right.
That seems like the biggest question in the history of humanity, you know, what's the meaning of life?
Yeah.
And at
The
some
transcendence.
at some point in my brief time here, I've been like, isn't it just to be happy? Like, isn't it be happy? Like, don't, you know, do something that makes you feel happy not at the expense of other people.